Hey everybody, welcome to day 5 of 21 days of prayer and fasting. I'm joined today with Dr. Scott Bennett. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. Today, our scripture is from Philippians 4 and 8, and it talks about fixing our minds on things that are true, noble, just, pure, lovely. It says if there's anything praiseworthy, anything excellent, think on these things. Why is that so important for our lives today to really fix our minds on those particular things?
Yes, the more I began to look at the definitions of all these, the more I realized what Paul is really saying is fix your mind upon Christ himself. Learn Christ, and then let that fixing of your mind affect everything that you do in your daily life. One example that I related to, not that I'm a professional athlete, but I love baseball, and Dansby Swanson is one of my favorite players. A few years ago, he shared that he had pretty much an anxiety attack where he had a hard time breathing and speaking and moving, and his girlfriend introduced him to a Christian psychologist who helped him to develop some health wellness techniques. And as a result of that, he began to get into scripture and really studying and diving into who he was, who God had made him to be. And I love this quote that Dansby said. He said, I really started to feel like I was connecting more with myself, which in turn was connecting me more with God. He's made us all in a certain way and made us to be who we're supposed to be. I felt like after I started to do that consistently, I really was embracing who he had made me to be. And I can relate to that because in my own life, I have to remind myself that first and foremost, I am a child of God. I am his son. I need to think that way first, and then everything else just falls in line after that. So whenever I have the stress and whenever I have the anxieties, whenever the pressure of got to do this, got to do that, first, I need to rest in the assurance that I am his child and that he is there with me to help me out. And I believe that just as with a professional athlete, physically they can have everything together. But mentally, if they're not there, then their whole game is going to be thrown off.
So how do you, on an everyday basis, and for the folks that are listening to us, when we say to fix our thoughts and our minds on something, how do you practically do that? I know you say to remember that you're a child of God, but how do you intentionally focus your mind on those things and not all the things that are pulling at you, the deadlines and the anxiety and the stress?
Yes, there's many times when I feel super stressed out because I've got so many things to do, but then I just have to remind myself of, what is really going to have an eternal impact, not just on my life, but on the lives of those around me. Let me just start with what I can do first, and then move on to the next, and then move on to the next, and then just pray, God, just help me to keep my mind focused upon you first. In that same passage of Philippians, Paul says, I've learned how to be content whether I have a little or a lot. Whether he's in prison or not, no matter what his circumstance, he can do that. He can have that proper mindset because Christ is there to help him, to give them the strength, not just physical, but mental strength as well.
So those are the practical things that you do as you're dealing with stress. But Philippians tells us that we are not citizens here, we're actually citizens of heaven. So when that mindset begins to change in you, what does that do to your outlook? What does that do to your attitude? What does that do to your perspective on the way that you view your day, view other people, and view yourself even?
Yes, it helps remind me that there are some things that just aren't that important, really. In the big scheme of things, they're not going to have any eternal impact. But then there are those things that are going to have eternal impact, and I need to refocus in my mind on those things and make sure that I'm viewing everything through the lens of a citizen of heaven who has so much greater in store than what this present earth would ever be able to offer to me.
If you had one more thing you could say to everybody to encourage them today, what would that be?
Yes, I would say really just prioritize and think about what are you setting as the most important thing in your life. And if it's not Christ, put him at the top. Because Paul reminds us that hey, I've learned so much, but if there's one thing I have learned, it's all nothing compared to the knowledge of Christ. Make that your first priority. Take time in your day, every day, to just get to know him a little bit better. And let that be your priority, and let that be what you filter everything in your mindset through.
That's great. Scott, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Hey, join us again tomorrow for 21 days of prayer and fasting. Hope you have a great day today.